Hello and welcome to Good Morning UK, Have Your Say, a Force for Good's mid-morning show coming to you live from our nerve centre here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConaughey. And this is our Wednesday show where we are British, we love the United Kingdom, and we want to stay together. And it's your place to come for a respite from the craziness of the world and somewhere where you will find common British sense. And this is our 20th programme in this series. So welcome to everybody who's coming in and watching us this morning, and thank you for your support over the last 20 weeks. Good morning to Stephen. Good to see you here, Stephen, and to Alan, and also to Sandra. Now, we have got a guest coming up at 11 o'clock. That's going to be Ronnie Kane, who is our co-director here at A Force for Good, and we're going to be talking to Ronnie about where we go from here and what our thoughts are on what has happened in the last couple of weeks as a consequence of the Scottish National Party being re-elected again. So we're going to be talking about that with Ronnie at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock, so please do stick around for that. Good to see James in here. I know you get interviewed by Japanese television. James, did you ever see the results of that? That was interesting. That was at our Great British Union Day that we held on the 1st of May in George Square. More about that in a moment. Good to see Angel. How are you? And Ross Andrew. Great British morning to everyone up and down the UK, says Ross, and totally concur with that sentiment. Tommy from Newcastle, always nice to see you in, Tommy. And Gina O'Connell, morning Alistair from a newbie. Thanks to Oliver Downs yesterday. Well, that was because I was speaking on Oliver Downs' broadcast with Unity News Network. I was speaking there for half an hour with him, had a very good chat, great guy. We had him on here about a month ago, so he was just returning the favour, which was really very gracious of him. Thanks to Ollie, brilliant bloke, and very much enjoyed the show with him yesterday. And good morning to Bill. Stephen says, the Nationalists keep saying the Union is dead. I've never felt the Union being stronger. Indeed. I know what you mean. I get that feeling as well. And good to see Samuel as well. Good morning, Alistair and everyone. I try to make every episode of AFFG Have Your Say every week and think your work is amazing and truly needed. Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Samuel. And Catherine as well. Good to see Catherine. Now, let me just touch this mic here, try to get it into focus a little better. There we go. I think what we need here is a stronger table. Anyway, what do people think about the Scottish Nationalist claim that a family of two is going to get £37,000 in an independent Scotland? A family of two, mother, father, two children, will get £37,000 in basic income support a year. Just read that on Twitter about 10 minutes ago, and I thought, how do they make up these numbers, right? Apparently the guy was working from some sort of report, but it's just making up numbers basically. £37,000 basic income, crying out loud. Eric, good morning to Eric. Good morning, Britain. Well, this is a better show than the one of that particular name, I remember, because whenever we always check Good Morning Britain in the morning just to see how things are going, and it's always just it's dismal, basically, or it's talking about things which are of no real consequence to the United Kingdom. So, but here at A Force for Good, we're definitely talking about things that are of consequence to the United Kingdom. Now, the Scottish Nationalists didn't do as well as they thought they were going to do back on the 6th of May. They were basically just held steady. They held steady, which is not what they were expecting. They were expecting to get an awful lot more than that. So, what does that mean for them going forward? What it means is they may have reached a high water mark, and we're going to be talking about that with Ronnie at the top of the hour. And it's basically pie in the sky, this basic income thing. But do you know what? Pie in the sky is attractive to people who believe that kind of thing. That's the danger. Okay, the real danger is that people accept that without question. Does the reality and facts of the matter, are they really important? That's the worrying thing. You know, I'm reading a very good book at the moment, which I'll just flag up here. It's called A State of Fear by Laura Dodsworth, and it's called How the UK Government Weaponised Fear During the COVID-19 Pandemic. And she avoids getting into the rights and wrongs of whether or not you believe COVID is as dangerous as they say, and she avoids getting into any questions regarding the vaccine or things like that, which is possibly just as well if she wanted to get published. But what she does is she looks at how the government manipulates fear, and it's a really good guide to basically government propaganda of all governments. And she talks about the extent to which very often the facts don't actually matter. The facts don't matter if you have got a voice that's strong enough to constantly put out one particular message. Then that's the message that will dominate to the exclusion of all others. And we see that here in Scotland as well. The extent to which the SNP can put out a message that doesn't need to be factually correct, but people will, because it's the loudest message and because it's always heard, then it tends to seep into people's subconscious and be believed. And how do you combat that? Well, awareness that it's happening, awareness that it can be done to you, and also seeking out alternative sources of information to the extent that those are still allowed in our country. An alternative source may be, as Bill says here, GB News, which is launching on the 13th of June. We await with bated breath to see how they perform, whether or not they are going to break the mould, as it were. It's certainly got a lot of potential. Callum says, fear is what will be the norm now. Climate lockdowns coming to a city near you. That's the thing. Now that they've got people into the idea that they can lock you down, then they can lock you down for anything, including, the world's going to end in 2,000 years unless we stay in our houses for 6 months this summer. You know, they can. You don't think they can make you believe that? They can if they ramp up the fear enough. Stephen says, the only pandemic we are fighting is Scottish nationalism. Indeed, indeed. Well, Ross says, combined with the free stuff the SNP is promising, it's their promises of huge amounts of money is not feasible. I would tend to agree with you. It can only really be funded by Westminster, if at all. And Callum here. Because people have voted SNP for independence, they can't disagree with Sturgeon on anything, even the locking up of their children and being kept away from parents. I know. That's so worrying. So worrying that they've been kept away from from your parents, and scaring old people as well. I heard some bad news this morning that the first person to get the vaccine in Britain, a bloke incredibly named William Shakespeare, died in the last 24 hours. So unfortunately the vaccine didn't do him much good at all. Nice to see Robert. Good morning to you, Robert. Good morning. Talking about this book, I read this incredible thing in it, right? And I'm going to have to find the link, and I haven't got the link with me at the moment, but I'll find the link and we'll put it up in the comments to this. But according to Laura Dodsworth, Matt Hancock, the Minister for Health, revealed in an interview on LBC Radio in 2021 that he had placed large orders for COVID vaccines as a result of watching the fictional film Contagion. This seems to have turned out well for our vaccine supplies, but it's a remarkable admission about the influence of a sensationalist Hollywood film about a fictional virus on the health secretary. Well, I saw that film Contagion. It was made 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, can't remember. And they even use the same language that the British government today is using, all about lockdowns and social distancing and all that kind of stuff. In that film Contagion, which was released several years before 2020. I mean, it's even about a virus that comes from China as a consequence of somebody being bitten by a bat. I mean, it's just almost as if it's incredible. You wonder, was it made? I'm not even going to say it. It's like just so follows the path of everything. And this came out before 2020. And now we're reading that Matt Hancock ordered vaccines as a consequence of watching that film. That's mad. Utterly mad. Oh my. Anyway. Well, we don't know, Tommy. We don't know what he died of at the moment. They certainly won't. If it was as a consequence of complications of an injection, you certainly will never hear about that. That's for sure. Sandra, there was a live debate on Facebook last night. Pensions in an independent Scotland. Some of them still peddling the myth that there is a big pot of money that will be divvied up in the case of independence. Oh, totally. Everyone seems to be dancing around the cause of all this strife. What is it? Satanism. That is what it is. I know some people believe the way things are going that there is a mega battle between good and evil being fought out at a certain level. I've seen that before. Average deaths in Scotland over the last 10 years in the lead up to the virus was 7,700. In 2020 it was only 6,800. That's interesting. Even freedom of speech in Scotland is now at risk in our own home, and that's for sure. And they still got voted in. I know. They still got voted in. Here in our constituency, what we campaigned against Humza Yousaf and Glasgow Pollock. We tried to emphasise what was happening with the danger of free speech being taken away. But what we were discovering was that a lot of people didn't even know the bill had... A lot of people didn't know it was even a thing. And it did bring home to me the extent to which some of our concerns for a huge number of people out there are not even known about. And they haven't been made to care about it. The government has not created a campaign, a fear campaign, to scare people into understanding the dangers of it. In fact, quite the opposite. What's Callum saying? Callum, I'm careful about the conspiracy stuff, but I know people who work in hospitals. I've been told COVID wards are closed down as empty, yet people as young as 23 are in after vaccines, but we can't talk about that, of course. Well, you know what, the whole thing can't talk about it. Last year, in 2020, we talked about it a lot until, in our programme last year, which was called Saturday Street Stall, until we realised that they were actually changing the definition of words to the point that you couldn't actually debate with them, because what I understood as a case, or what I understood as an infection, and what other people understood as cases and infections, and what science hitherto had understood as cases and infections, was all being turned upside down. And an infection, which we used to be understood as somebody being admitted to hospital with a disease, was no longer what they called an infection. What they called an infection was somebody who tested positive to this PCR test, even though you were perfectly healthy. And so they were calling healthy people infectious, which was just, as we understood it at the time, and still do, inverting science on its head. So at that point we thought, this game's a bogey, it's weighed against us, and anybody who tries to speak out against it is going to be in trouble. And then we got removed from Twitter for 4 months, and we think it might have been something related to that. We're not sure. So we've just kind of stayed away from that. But I'm talking about it today because this is actually a good book, which everybody should maybe consider. A State of Fear, how the government weaponizes fear, and how they've done it during this pandemic. And, you know, we used to sing Britain's Never Never Will Be Slaves, but I'm not so keen on singing that one anymore, unfortunately. Not after the example of 2020. Yeah, basically the whole world's gone crazy. And Jan says, everyone thinking everyone is potentially contagious is a perfect plan for control. Well, this lady, Laura Dodsworth, she points out that what's happened is that they've made the source of fear to be each other. You know, 2 or 3 years ago, the source of fear was terrorists carrying bombs on their body. And that's still obviously a concern. But now they've taken it right down to actually just the human body itself being the source of terror. That was one of the wee things that she spoke about in there, which I thought was quite a clever wee analogy. And here we go. Why are they urging people with no symptoms to get a test? If it was such a massive problem, they wouldn't have to go looking for cases. People would be dropping in the streets. Absolutely. Why are they doing that? Why are they going looking for cases? And why are people who will never, ever, who are not in danger of it, why are they taking the vaccine? You know, you cannot escape from it. It's on my head this morning because I woke up, put on the mobile phone, got onto TikTok. The first thing I see on TikTok is a so-called Scottish government advert aimed at 18 to 30-year-olds to get the vaccine on TikTok. Okay? Now, that's where a lot of teenagers reside on TikTok. And it was like, that was the first thing I saw on TikTok. I mean, this is a multi-million, if not billion-pound campaign to get vaccines into arms of people who don't need it. 18 to 30-year-olds are not at risk at all, anywhere in the world of this COVID thing. So how come they're telling us, why this desperation? I've spoken to lots of people about this. Nobody knows why the system is so deliberately trying to get it right down to children. None of whom are at risk at all. You know, I'll take a vaccine if I'm going to die. If I'm going to go to Africa for a holiday and there's a vaccine against getting bitten by a poisonous snake or something, I'm going to take it because I know that if I get bitten by that snake or that mosquito or whatever, I'm going to die unless I take the vaccine. So yeah, I can understand that. So I'm pro-vaccine, but I'm not pro-vaccine for something that's not a risk for my age group. It's weird what's going on. Really weird. Anyway, Anyway, let's get back to talking about this day in British history, because this is our competition coming up, and this is going to I love this story, by the way. I love this story. We've got a guest coming up at 11 o'clock. I love this story. On this day in British history, a man was born called Bob Fitzsimmons, who was a British boxing champion, at 26th of May in 1863. Now, this is a remarkable chap because he was British. His father was Irish, his mother was from Cornwall, and he was born in Helston in Cornwall. And at the age of 10, he moved with his parents to Timaru, which is in the South Island of New Zealand, where he grew up and where he worked in his father's blacksmith shop. Now, this would be towards the end of the 19th century, and things were quite rough out in Timaru, and apparently in his blacksmith shop he kept getting into fights with customers, to the point that people would actually come to his blacksmith shop to see him fighting his customers, which just shows you just the degree of customer service back in those days was quite different from how we understand it today. Anyway, working in a blacksmith shop, he certainly built up his strength, and he became one of the most powerful hitters in history. And he went on to win 3 world titles in 3 different weight classes. Okay. In 1891, he won the world middleweight title against a fellow called Jack Dempsey, who was not to be confused with the Jack Dempsey of the 1920s. And then but I mean, I don't know how these things were really properly refereed back in those days. But anyway, he was knocking down Dempsey to such an extent that he actually begged Dempsey to give up, to submit. But Dempsey wouldn't submit, so he knocked him out and then carried him to his corner. And then later that year as well, the police had to intervene in another fight to basically stop the carnage. And then, tragically, he, in a sparring performance, public sparring performance, he actually knocked out and unfortunately killed his sparring partner, which was tragic. He got acquitted of manslaughter for that. And then he won a disputed version of the heavyweight title on the banks of the Rio Grande on the Mexican side, because in Texas boxing was actually banned by law, so they crossed the Rio Grande and they did it on the other side of the Rio Grande. And then the next year he won a more generally recognised heavyweight title, and he is considered to be Britain's first ever world heavyweight champion, and he won that in 1897. And then in 1903 he dropped down to light heavyweight and he won that as well. And another thing which I really liked is in one of his fights they couldn't find a referee, so they got, would you believe it, Wyatt Earp, the gunfighter and lawman, to referee the fight as well. And Wyatt Earp had to get his guns removed as well, and then he said that he had forgotten he was wearing them. Anyway, very colourful story, although he died only at the age 54 in Chicago, where he is buried in a cemetery there. Anyway, so that was Bob Fitzsimmons. On this day was born, and he went on to win for Britain the world heavyweight title, the world light heavyweight title, and the world middleweight title. The only man to win 3 world titles at 3 different weight categories. That's Bob Fitzsimmons on this day. Now, we've got our guest coming up in 5 minutes at the top of the hour. We've got, just to mention, thanks for the team that's coming on, responding to people on the Facebook chat as well. Alan says, great story, Alistair. We'll put that up in full on our Facebook page about 12:15 today. And I'll ask a question. In a couple of minutes, I'll ask a question about that story that I've just told you, and the winner will get a tin of Union Jack jelly beans. Quite a guy, indeed. Quite a bloke, a fighter. At times were hard. Back in those days, bred hard men. Oof, seriously hard. Working hard, manual labour, fighting. Oof, what a day. What an age. Bill Baxter says, any word on Parler? Parler's back up, yes. Parler's back up. We still have our site there. We don't post on it very much these days. No health and safety. Now, Sandra's just saying, regarding the COVID thing, positive tests mean nothing. It can pick up traces of a previous coronavirus infection, which could have been just a common cold. Tell us how many are in intensive care. That's the number we need. That's right, because Glasgow is still in this... We're still stuck in this level 3 lockdown, or so it seems anyway. And they're still ramping up the fear here in Glasgow, although to all intents and purposes life is really just tending to go on as normal, except for all the mask wearing that's going on. That's the only thing that makes you believe that there's still something out there, and that's possibly deliberate, as this lady Laura Dodsworth points out, in A State of Fear. Now, yes, I'm going to ask a question based upon the story about Bob Fitzsimmons, Britain's first ever boxing champion in 3 different weight divisions. In fact, the world's only boxing champion in 3 weight divisions. And the winner will get this tin of jelly beans. And I'm going to ask you a question now. And if you send the answer to this email, contact@aforceforgood.uk. Now, the first person who gets this question correct will win this tin of jelly beans, and it'll be winging its way to you this afternoon. So send your answer here. And the question is, Bob Fitzsimmons was the world's first ever champion in 3 weight divisions. Can you name one of those weight divisions? Any one of those weight divisions which I mentioned to you. And if you can name that, first person off the mark will receive this tin of jelly beans. Okay, good. I see our guest Ronnie is in the waiting room, so I'm going just to bring him in. Ladies and gentlemen, please do welcome Ronnie, who is our co-director at A Force for Good, and I'm just bringing Ronnie in right now.
Good morning, Alistair. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Ronnie.
Good to be here.
Aye, thanks very much for coming in. We always look forward to your wise words of wisdom as far as the nature of our political reality is concerned.
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's give the SNP a real thanking this morning.
Let's do that.
What are they like? I'll tell you this. They're still the minority party. And we are the majority. We are the majority. And that's why it's important that their propaganda doesn't subsume us. This is what has been happening over the years. Their propaganda machine is slick. And it is extremely dangerous because they're all about destroying the United Kingdom. There can be nothing worse than that. Millions died in 2 world wars in the last century in order that we preserve our freedoms. And here in 2020, we gave them all away. We're house arrest people. We've been arrested. We have given up our freedoms. We're dictated to. And this is on top of what a judge recently called legislative hyperactivity. This nationalist group in Holyrood have been steadily criminalising offences that previously did not give you a criminal record. But I think there's something like over 2,500 previous offences, innocuous things in themselves, might be something as simple as trespassing on somebody's ground or whatever. Previously, a slap in the wrist. Now you get put on a criminal register. Now that is wrong. And this is what bureaucrats love. They love to make rules and regulations, and we shouldn't be in this situation. In a fair democracy, in England, for the comparable period, it was something over 300 offences were criminalised. So this minority ruling elite in that cancerous carbuncle that they call Holyrood are just using us as, you mentioned the word slave earlier. Obviously it's not as far as that, but our grandchildren will not have the same freedoms that we enjoy. Even the eroded freedoms that we've got now, they will have even less if this doesn't stop. And this is what we've got to get out. We've got to get the message out. Now, I was optimistic, I think, at the last election that things would change. But no, they remain much the same, much the same. So, they're still a minority party. They still need bolstering in a coalition. However, I have noticed for a while, and I agree with Stephen, he said earlier that unionism is on the up. I believe it is, and that cheers me up no end. And I have believed for some time also that the wind is out of the sails of the Nationalist Party, the party that would give us a republicanism and destroy the United Kingdom. Well, I don't think they have the support they used to have. I think that their following has melted away, like snow on a spring day, as they say. Even their big donors, the Bogues in Perth, Springfield, the house builder, are they giving as much, if anything? The couple in West Kilbride, who the husband sadly died, I think they had stopped donating to the Nationalist Party. So I think that there isn't so much money in the kitty. So that was one of the things that gave me a reason for hope. The other thing, of course, was that scandalous affair that was brought to light in the inquiry towards the end of the year, where a former First Minister found himself in the dock, we believe, at the instigation of the First Minister of the present day. And yet, a jury comprising mainly of women, a judge who was a woman, found the witnesses unbelievable, and the former First Minister did not go to jail. Now, for the charges that were arraigned against him, he would have gone to jail for a long time had the witnesses been credible. Now, this is a serious matter. To deny someone their liberty, an innocent person, to be placed in jail is a most serious matter, and I don't think we'll have heard the end of that. But Holyrood is more like a soap opera now. And all of the parties concerned are disgusting, and I include all of the parties. They are diametrically opposed to the government in Westminster, which I find appalling. I think we had devolved powers in order that we might work better with Westminster. Well, we don't. We know that now. So, I would say Holyrood definitely is an unnecessary extravagance for this country counterproductive. And for as long as there are turkeys in Holyrood who won't vote for Christmas, obviously they won't vote themselves out. So we have to do something. We have to dissolve Holyrood. We have to dismember it. We have to deregulate it. Whatever you call it, it has to go. It must not be allowed to continue. And I think Unionists, in conjunction with the government of the day, because I don't think this is going to happen overnight, but I am determined that we will see that Holyrood is a failed experiment and it won't continue. It must stop at some point. And we have a central government for the big decisions. The Scottish office and the Scottish Secretary never went away, by the way. They're still there.
Yeah.
And local authority for local issues. So, there we have it. That's my opinion.
Well, you're not the only one with that opinion, Ronnie, that's for sure. I was reading an article this week by a fellow called Matthew Lynn. It says, Sturgeon's referendum will make losers of Scotland and the whole of UK. And in it he says, in truth, just basically mirroring what you said here, in truth, devolution has been a dismal economic failure. And I like this bit, creating a permanently disgruntled region, depressing investment, wasting resources, and making it harder to create prosperity. Nothing good has come from it. And that's so true. It's just given a stage for I would say, permanently disgruntled political class of people who will never be happy. You know, they'll never be happy. The only way you can have people happy in Holyrood is if the governing party is the same party that's in Westminster. For example, during the first few years of devolution, you had Labour running the show in Scotland and Labour in Westminster, and it appeared to be sort of ticking along because it was the same party running the show in both places, and so there wasn't that much tension, as it were. But then, of course, when that changed, as everybody knew it was going to very quickly change, because everybody knew that the Labour Party in 1999 had created the gallows that they would hang themselves upon. Everybody knew that. Those of us who could see the way, those of us who understood politics in Scotland and how it was inevitably going to play out, we could see that this would just pass to the SNP, not within a generation, but within, 8 years of elections. So, and then he concludes, we have a parade of grandstanding, fiscally irresponsible politicians undermining the union, pledged to disruption and committed to discord. It's hardly a backdrop likely to encourage investment or trade. In truth, it is hard for an economy to perform well when such a huge chunk of it is constantly trying to get out. It may be too late to turn back the clock, but it has made the UK a poorer country than it otherwise would have been. And he says, whatever happens at this coming election, this was written a few weeks ago, the UK will be the loser. And that's so true. So it's up to us, really, to try to rescue something from the wreckage, as it were.
Yes. And Unionists can do that. Mm-hmm. Undoubtedly, Alistair. We can do that. It's unfortunate that we've been mired in the mud since the SNP. And you mentioned devolution forming, creating a gallows where the Labour Party hung itself. I would say this: Holyrood has provided a platform for this. I'm on the verge of swearing here. For this minority party, they've provided a platform. Had it not been for Holyrood, where would the Nationalist Party be today? They'd be nowhere. But they've got this fantastic platform, and it's paid for by the British taxpayer. And I dare say Holyrood MSPs, their hangers-on, civil servants, all of that, Holyrood may well be the single biggest employer in Scotland. producing nothing. Absolutely. Hee-haw. So, all that comes out of Holyrood is just so much hot air. It's a talking shop. It's nice, it's comfortable. They get their cups of coffee. I dare say there's a wee restaurant in there somewhere. I don't know. Haven't been to the place. Don't have no wish, no desire to go to it. But I do know this. It'll have a trough. And the politicians of all parties, they cannot get to that trough quickly enough.
Oh, yeah.
It's costing the British taxpayer plenty. Unnecessarily.
Absolutely, that's right. It does. Holyrood does have a restaurant, and it is subsidised by the British taxpayer.
Why am I not surprised?
It's one of the reasons why politicians go in to Holyrood, and then 5 years later they come out about 3 or 4 stones heavier.
That's
but
right.
I liked your phrase there. It's one of the biggest employers in Scotland, but producing nothing.
We need employed people who create wealth. That's how we'll get the benefit. It'll filter down to all of us. I want to say right at this point, a lot of things that are being said just now are prefaced by if and when Scotland becomes independent. Well, I'll tell you this, I could put my pension on Scotland never being independent. It will always remain part of the United Kingdom. So why are we discussing these things? This business of £37,500 for an average family, why are we discussing it? Because it's only going to, well, it's been promised to happen if Scotland becomes independent. Well, I'll tell you this. I don't believe Scotland will become independent, but if it does, that's one of these millions of promises that have come out of Holyrood that's not going to be kept. We know that. We know it. They can afford to say absolute tosh rubbish because there never will be an independent Scotland. Scotland is already independent. Britain is on the cusp of a great future, leaving Europe and going into the world to trade. That's what Britain is good at. That's what made us the country that we are, and we are not going to fragment. We are not, because only Scotland will lose out of it. The rest of the UK possibly will hardly notice that we've gone. However, we have a big investment in Britain. During the earlier centuries, I don't know, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, even 20th century, Scots people invested their lives, they invested their wealth, they invested their ambition in a United Kingdom. So we're not going to throw away.
Yes. Well said. I mean, the rest of the United Kingdom, I know you are only joking there, but they certainly would notice it because there wouldn't really be much of a United Kingdom left if Scotland, were to...
Well, the Nationalist Party are doing their best to destroy us. And at the moment, Scotland is being reduced to being an irritant. And again, it's a platform of Holyrood. Who would listen to the First Minister if there was no Holyrood? The mainstream media love her because they don't like Boris. So they love
Yes, and they don't...
So that's why she gets all that praise. I have English friends who say to me, your First Minister comes over, and especially during this pandemic, in a very caring manner or whatever. I've never seen her. I don't watch her. You'll not be surprised to hear me say that. I've never listened to her. And when I hear an English friend saying that to me, I say, you are being hoodwinked. This is part of the Nationalist Party's propaganda. And it's all about fooling the people. Well, you can't fool all the people all the time. I have that in very good authority. So,
yes.
So that's what we're up against, and we need to have we need to be constantly vigilant, and we need to be constantly agitating them, as they are surely an irritant to the rest of the United Kingdom, who are saying, if the Scots want independence so much, which is not independence, it's separation, if they want separation so much, let them have it. Well, that's the danger, and that's part of their propaganda.
Absolutely.
They're creating ill feeling across the border in an attempt to alienate the English. And it may well. I lived in Spain for a wee while, and I used to say to my English friends, I don't understand why you don't have a referendum and say, do you wish Scotland or not?
We don't want to give them that chance, no, Ronnie. But
I said it tongue in cheek, and they look at me askance. But if Hollywood continues for much longer, then that's what I would fear might happen.
That's a danger, certainly, and that's part of the strategy as well, I think, of the Scottish Nationalists, because they don't care if they get get people in England wound up. It's all grist to the mill in order to help the breakup of the United Kingdom. And somebody asked me yesterday, I was on a programme with a colleague, and somebody asked me, what can we in England do to help the cause of keeping the Union together? And I thought that was a very good question. And just off the top of my head, I came up with 3 points. One was, the first thing you have to do when you're faced with any sort of propaganda is to try to centre yourself psychologically, which often means switching off the media, because we do have a media, and you touched on it there, that loves Sturgeon and hates Brexit. That's a big part of it as well. A lot of the London-based media hate Brexit, and so they see that Sturgeon hates Brexit as well, so they're very pally with her as a consequence. So when you can see that the media have it in for Britain, then you can switch it off, or you can approach it from a position of awareness, and you can also look around to find more wholesomely British sources of information, such as this programme. Other things you can do is simply speak up for Britain,
That's right.
And say, if you're in the pub with your friends and they're like, oh, these Scots need to just leave or whatever, just speak up and say, well, I'm British, I believe in the Union, I believe in its potential, I believe we've got great opportunities together, I want to stay together. Just speak up for the Union. And thirdly, of course, they can, if you choose to get more physically involved, you can actively support organisations here who are trying to keep the Union together, whether that's simply signing up to A Force for Good via our sign up link, which we'll put up there on our platforms, where you can just send us your name and email and we'll keep in touch with you that way, or whether it's subscribing to this YouTube channel, which is really important if you can do that, or whether it's taking a more active role in actually contributing financially to help us, because we run very frugally, and we are trying to build up our Union supporters. That's our monthly donors now, to get up at least another 50 monthly donors this year is what we need to reach by the end of the year.
We are grateful of the support that we get, because that's a sure indication that people like what you're doing, Alistair, and they want to support you. They like what you're doing. And I've noticed in Facebook, possibly post-election, frustrated people saying, I want to do more, I want Brand Britain to be more evident, I want to be part of that. And so people who feel like that are very welcome to come to A Force for Good, of course.
Yes, exactly. Or even just like purchasing a merchandise, for example, this wee book for the Union, that we sell a few of those every week, and that really just does help us to tick over as well. And it's only $5, and that includes postage, and you can get that from our shop, and we'll put up the link to that as well in the
very
comments.
Very worthwhile, the $5, yeah.
And we tell a wee story about the United Kingdom in there. We tell a wee story, because that's what it's about. It's about the story. It's not just about 1 or 2 points. It's about trying to create a narrative since the dawn of time, essentially, when we began to come together. And Catherine Rainey there says, we need you guys. Well, thank you, Catherine, and we need you and all the people such as yourself who support us. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Unionism is on the rise. I believe that. And I think what will hold us back undoubtedly is the fact that we are individualistic. So what suits one unionist may well not suit another unionist. And that's where we have a little problem. And the Nationalists, they are not so cold. They are more emotive, and they get the people who are emotional about Scotland in the medieval past, and they try to relive it and all of that. And they're not being realistic. But
yes,
I think their votes did slide away, and I think that very much that the business of allowing 16-year-olds to vote, mere children, prisoners to vote, and migrants that have just stepped off the boat, possibly don't have a handle on the language yet. Oh, in fact, that was panic moves by the SNP, and it probably worked for them. It filled that gap of the disappearing SNP voter, the traditional SNP voter.
Yes. Ronnie, it's...
I know.
we've done our time there. Thank you very much indeed for your thoughts, giving us some things to think of.
Alistair.
Yeah, well, always good to have that. That's what we like to hear, basically. So if anybody else would like to come on the show and rant, please do drop us a line, and I might be able to accommodate you on here. So I'll just
the Nationalists a tanking.
Yes, absolutely. That's the new phrase for the billboard. Okay, Ronnie, I'll say goodbye now, and we'll speak again. Right, nice cheers.
Right, bye now.
Good stuff. That's the one and only Ronnie Kane, who is a fellow director here at A Force for Good. Excellent. Well, competition question. Now, I asked the competition, which was Bob Fitzsimmons, born on this day in Cornwall, became world heavyweight champion in 3 different weight categories. Now, can you name one of those weight categories that he won in? And we have several people who have come on with correct answers, and it always does come down to who can get in first. So I'm pleased to say that we have a winner, and I shall just put this person's name up. And the winner is Ian Moss. And Ian Moss correctly came in with the answer, one of the answers, which was middleweight. So he initially won at middleweight, and then he went on to win at heavyweight, and then he dropped a weight back down to light heavyweight. So that's the answer. Congratulations, Mr. Moss. If you can please send us via that same email, if you can send us your mailing address, and we'll get that sent to you this afternoon. That's this tin of luxury jelly beans will be winging your way to you. And we'll throw in a copy of Union Heart as well for you, which goes to all our Union supporters. If you'd like to become a Union supporter, folk out there, as I mentioned, we've got a campaign now. We're going to try to get up to another 50 Union supporters by the end of this year. There has to be 50 people worldwide who believe in the continued existence of the United Kingdom and who can afford £1.15 a week, which works out over 52 weeks as £5 a month. So if that's you, please do consider becoming a Union supporter. You'll get a copy of our free magazine whenever it comes out. You'll automatically get all back issues if you request them, and you'll also get our little Union Heart badge, which is this wee badge here, which is in fact you'll see several examples of in other iterations in the background here, including that fantastic poster and that amazing piece of wooden artwork created by Dramatic Scotland Creations. Just to mention as well, and we'll put up the links before the end here, we spoke in George Square on the 1st of May. We gave 2 short 15-minute speeches. They are now up on our website. The first speech summarises from a Unionist perspective how the Union came together and why it came together back in 1707. And the second speech, which we posted yesterday on our website, just talks about some reasons to love the United Kingdom today. Badges are very often a talking point as well. People say, oh, that's a nice wee badge, where did you get that? And then you can get into a wee spiel if you want. Well, we've got the Union Heart one, and we've also got the Union Flag one, and you can get these at our shop. Good stuff, folks. It's the bottom of the hour. Just remains for me to say thank you very much for watching. We'll be back next week. If you know anybody who'd like to be interviewed by us for 20 minutes, please do suggest them to us via our email or via Facebook Messenger or whatever. And please do also think about our Union Supporters Programme as well, because we are entering a fight, as we're always in a fight for the Union. The Union is an idea. Ideas are always being tested. The Union is a particularly good idea, and so physically it has to stay together. So, and we will, as we always say, we will stay the course for the Union we so love. So it just remains for me to say, folks, thank you very much for watching. God bless the United Kingdom, and God save the Queen. See you next week.